Hey everyone, how's it going? Delrith here, bringing you another rapid fire review, this time on the game Phoenix Point, a tactical squad based action game developed and published by Snapshot Games. It's best summarized as a turn based action strategy game that is almost identical in playstyle to the XCOM series as of late. In fact, that's one of its primary selling points that they marketed, the fact that it was from the original creator of the XCOM franchise, Julian Gollop. Gollop? I don't know how to say his name. We're just going to go with Julian Gollop. To give a synopsis of it, you're the only remaining commander of the Phoenix Point organization, an organization that has existed for a very long time with their entire foundation and principles being formed around protecting mankind and ensuring the survival of the human race. At this point in time, the entire world has suffered a massive catastrophic attack through unknown forces, and most of mankind has been wiped out or converted into some sort of alien creature, with a strange mist seeping out from our oceans and covering the globe. You'll be fighting back against this menace, working with different factions, and just generally trying to save the human race from annihilation, with a clock always counting down to doomsday, through the sacrifice of dozens of soldiers and maybe your morals in the process. Okay, other Joe's gotta be the sacrificial lamb. I mean, that just makes the most sense. So, I really like XCOM. I've played Terror from the Deep, I've played at least half a dozen or so XCOMs over the last 15 years, and I've enjoyed them all, especially the recent Enemy Unknown and XCOM 2, so I had somewhat high hopes going into Phoenix Point. It was a Kickstarter sort of project too, making like $760,000 in the end, so I was hopeful that it'd be a fully functional game with a solid story, background, etc., and what have you, especially when you add in the money that the Epic Game Store gave them to be exclusive for a little bit. Anyway, so Phoenix Point looks pretty damn good. It's obvious that there was heavy inspiration from XCOM and that they borrowed a lot from that series, with constant comparisons able to be drawn from everything, including the world map, to the tile sets, to the armor, to the characters, the alien designs, you name it. It's definitely a tribute sort of game and meant to be in the exact same genre, and for what their budget is, I'd say it looks totally fine. Nothing really stands out as being ugly, everything looks more than acceptable for a $40 modern game, and I really enjoyed the art style and direction in general that they went with. Fighting these sort of amalgamation hybrid monstrosities that are half sea creature and half human was pretty freaking neato, and all the enemy designs in general stood out as rather unique. The alien sea creature tile sets were very well done and looked fantastic, with their general layouts not at all becoming tiresome and too repetitive. Most of the UI is fairly basic, but it serves its purpose well, without too much clutter in the slightest, and it's entirely easy to understand. Weapons and their effects as well are pretty great, especially the turrets and their animations later on, and the feedback from your attacks on enemies when you break limbs and whatnot is mostly satisfying. I really liked the sound design and the fully voiced dialogue cutscenes, although they weren't animated themselves and followed the XCOM style of talking still photos. They were still well done, and all of the lore and information they provide was something that I didn't have any issue sitting through like I have in the past with similar games.
I'm glad you decided to help us. But I hope both the Phoenix Project and the Polyphonic Tendency can at least recognize that these attacks on the mist repellers aren't a coincidence.
Gotta say, though, that most of the music of Phoenix Point just sucks ass, however, and it's definitely what I would call a weak point, with the same few droning tracks playing non-stop, and the game really not having anything that stood out. Honestly, there were points where my Twitch chat was actually yelling at me to shut the music off completely, and it just really gets annoying after a while. There's also, and there's really no way to sugarcoat this, a metric fuck ton of technical problems, ranging from non-stop crashing to sound bugs to even save corruption, which completely forces players to start over. Couple that with a lot of people getting really bad FPS and pretty much every other sort of technical issue you could think of under the sun, and you've got a problem, something which has caused an avalanche of refunds to be requested. Did I just crash the game? Did I just Crash the game. It's worth noting, however, that a lot of these issues have been identified and a few of them have even been fixed, with more fixes planned in the immediate future, but the problems themselves are a damn shame and honestly shouldn't have existed in the first place at launch. So combat takes place in a turn-based style, with you controlling a squad of up to 8 soldiers, or a couple vehicles later on that you construct, with mechanics like cover bonuses, limb damage, fear, equipment break, all tossed in for added effect. You can do things like issue soldiers to go into Overwatch, a mode that lets them shoot enemies that move into range, throw grenades and other various explosives, heal themselves, pretty much all the standard functions you'd come to expect. Phoenix Point does have something really cool, though, added to it that other similar games don't have: the ability to manually aim your shots and fire them, well, basically VATS, allowing you to target individual spots FPS style on enemies and to focus to destroy specific limbs. I cut his arm off. I punched his arm off. Oh, what a maneuver. This also lets you do stuff like shoot invisible enemies if you can figure out what tile they're on. And overall, I just really liked the feature in general, so props to them for that. Just being able to do a really cool combo, like poisoning an enemy to see the mist of where they're standing and then shooting that mist to kill them, felt right. And I hope other games in the future adapt it. He's right here. You can tell because of the movement grid. Alright, this is gonna be a really risky maneuver. Got him! I love that mechanic. I love the free aim. Soldiers you recruit will have specific classes and specializations, earning skill points through leveling up and completing missions, allowing you to customize them to fill specific roles that you want to have in combat. You could have something like a hybrid engineer class with a heavy assault weapon. It's quite flexible and honestly well done, and I have no complaints about it whatsoever. There's a few broken combos that you will definitely find in a playthrough, like a sniper mixed with a heavy and using Rage Burst, but you'll need to liberally use it to get through the game's campaign, so it's not a bad thing, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Most missions will have a fairly straightforward objective: recover this thing, kill all the enemies, blow up the generator, and sometimes even just survive, with special missions and having special objectives related to the story, like kill this ultra baddie, so those never really felt stale. There's not a lot of unique mission types in the game, but there's enough variety to keep you interested. It's not at all on the level that the recent XCOM games have offered, but they had far bigger budgets, so I'm not going to complain. The overworld, or geoscape as they call it, is a representation of the globe, housing things from the various faction bases, called havens, to your facilities, with random points of interest tossed all over the place. These POIs can be explored through sending squads via VTOLs to their markers, allowing you to identify bonuses like salvage yards, extra tech, blueprints, hidden towns, and all sorts of fun things. Base management is fairly straightforward and facility-based, with bases having a limited number of slots for you to construct things like med bays and training and what have you. There's also a research tab that directly ties into this, and it'll be the way for you to power up your soldiers in the geoscape, allowing you to research aliens you fought, faction technology you've stolen, and generally increase your tech level to combat the threats you're encountering. Oh yeah, and speaking of factions, they're kind of a huge freaking part of this game and integral to you getting the coolest stuff that Phoenix Point has to offer. There's your typical alien-loving cult fanatics, the science nerds that argue all the time, and, of course, the paramilitary organization, each one giving specific benefits for working with them and supporting them in their goals. Their technology is all unique to them and offers very specific traits that fit a specific purpose, so make sure you choose wisely when allying with them and unlocking their bonuses. I just enjoy the variety that they add. I mean it when I say choose wisely too, as they'll eventually go to war and murder the hell out of each other, so keep that in mind, as it's really hard to fix their relations with you later on if you end up hated. The special missions you get by progressing and standing are all fairly solid. I ended up save scumming and doing all of them, and with it all tying into the main campaign, it's kinda good. But if diplomacy isn't your strong point, you could just kill them all if you really felt like it, with no faction being specifically required to finish the game, and the option to raid their havens and steal their ships always being present, which again is another bonus. Now then, the question a lot of people will have that I specifically have been holding back on talking about until now is, how difficult is the game? Well, to put it as simply as possible, it starts off well and then turns into a nightmare shit show of total fuckery. What I mean by this is that the scaling is all over the place, and honestly, it's really hard in a lot of ways for the absolute worst reasons. The first 10 or 15 hours or so are great. Alright, he fucking got crit. Fucking bitch. Your soldiers scale appropriately, the enemies don't kill you in a single turn. There's really not a lot of bullshit going on, but that suddenly changes at around 20% on the Doom meter. Suddenly, out of nowhere, enemies are going to start doing ridiculous damage to your soldiers. This is going to start with your guys being blasted into oblivion in single turns, the same enemies that you've been fighting seemingly having done a ton of combat drugs and can kick your ass if you let them have but a single shot. Did he just one-tap Doc? He just killed... Oh, God, no. He killed Joe. Joe died in a single turn. Then you're going to encounter the new and total bullshit enemy types, Sirens. These things have the ability to mind control multiple units in a single turn, sometimes up to 3 of your soldiers, with multiple Sirens on a map, pretty much causing you to game over instantaneously. With a lot of the enemies in the game, you can shoot certain parts to disable their abilities, like arms to stop them from shooting and mouth from spitting, but Siren's mind control can't be stopped once it starts unless the Siren dies. Is she gonna scream through the wall? Nope. How do I stop the mind control? Okay, they mind controlled OJ again. I wish there was a way to, like, stop this. There's no way to stop the mind control. Like, with a lot... Wait, they can mind control 2 people at... Are you fucking serious? Mind controlled the sniper. Okay, Del got mind controlled, which is bad. I don't know what you're supposed to do. That is so nuts. This leads to absolutely awful balance where you'll totally be fine one turn and then lose your entire team the next to a barrage of mind controls, which in a game with permadeath kinda really sucks. Not having a solid counter to something that kicks your ass so hard blows, and there's research later on to make it slightly less bullshit, but it's really just not enough. There's a lot more really poorly balanced junk too, like goo spitters that lock your team down for 3 turns at a time that can be reapplied every turn from across the map, rocket launchers that instantaneously kill your soldiers, turrets that kill your soldiers in 1 turn, the list goes on and on. It's seriously to the point where even on the standard difficulties, it's incredibly frustrating, and I can't even imagine playing on Legend or whatever, and it feels like the game truly just wants you to save scum at every turn. I ran into a couple missions that were so brutally, absolutely insane that I was forced to save scum and play perfectly, or my game would have ended right there and I would have had to start over from the beginning with all 8 soldiers on my team dying in a single turn. It's awful. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not a matter of me disliking something that's difficult, let me make that clear. I loved doing Iron Man Legend on XCOM 2 and getting my ass kicked, but it has to feel like it's my fault that I'm losing. You know, the I fucked up feeling and then the I can do better next time. In this case, with Phoenix Point, it just doesn't exist. You die from total bullshit, not because of mistakes you made, and it's just entirely too punishing to be enjoyable at times. Couple that with the world state escalating and the difficulty of maintaining order on the planet ramping up to extremes, and it becomes massively stressful to deal with. I'm not sure that the end was tested too thoroughly, and that whoever designed it was probably a masochist. You'll probably need to take multiple breaks in frustration if you play through, so keep that in mind. Also, seriously, don't play on anything higher than hard. You'll be regretting it later on. Like, trust me on that. Balance changes are definitely something that should be looked at in the future, and I hope certain enemies are toned down outside of the hardest difficulty. They're just too nuts right now, and it takes away a lot of my enjoyment, which was a total bummer. Pushing through and doing everything fully, you'll end up getting maybe 50 hours out of the game, which is pretty solid, with the conclusion being more than satisfying and the planned DLC adding hope for the future. The length isn't an issue at all, and I definitely felt like I got my money's worth in that sense, with the different factions offering different playthroughs if you choose to go through and play once more after finishing the first time. Overall, Phoenix Point isn't an awful game in the slightest. It's not nearly the same production value of the most recent XCOMs, but it's not bad, and with a bit of polish it could definitely end up being one of my favorite turn-based strategy games. For all of its problems, I still enjoyed it. I found myself wanting to keep going and wanting to keep playing, and that says a lot, especially given all the other releases that I have to choose from right now. Currently, with all the technical issues and the scaling being the way it is, the absolute highest that I can give is a final score of 7 out of 10, and even that's pushing it, and I really hope that they fix the issues that hold it back from being even higher, as it could easily potentially be a 9 out of 10 once you're not dying to bullshit every turn or crashing when you blink. So I say give it a shot if you really dug the XCOM games, or just like turn-based combat like that in general. Just be expecting to fight through some problems to really enjoy everything that it has to offer. Phoenix Point has a lot of potential, and I'm all for waiting for fixes and seeing what the DLC in the future brings to the table. I'll definitely be going back and playing through once more when it's fully polished. That's going to be it for this rapid fire review. If you liked it, do me a solid and hit that like button and subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, ring the bell to get notifications on new videos in the future. Oh yeah, and if you like the rapid fire reviews or would like to see when I'm doing them live on Twitch, you can head over to my Twitter at AJSADelrith, all one word, and give me a follow. I'd appreciate it. Until the next video, this is Delrith, and I'll be seeing you.